that leads you to hyperinflation, because at that point, like, you just have all this money, and I'm pretty sure like Germany went through something like this during the 20th century, right, where they just had hyperinflation, and you end up having to buy like a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow full of dollar bill, of currency. And so that doesn't work either, because again, like, the idea of money is we have to believe that it's backed by something. And so if the government's just like now printing money to everybody for nothing, then what is that backed by? What does money mean at that point? And I think society at that point it's just not going to work. So we have to look at alternatives.
So universal basic income is not a good one in your opinion?
No, it's not. I think there's a lot of drawbacks with it. I mentioned a couple, but there's others as well. But the biggest thing is, you as an individual in the UBI model have no ownership rights. You have no say in what happens to you as an individual. You are entirely dependent on somebody else that owns everything. And that's a model that, yeah.
I was just watching Alien today. In the universe of the Alien movies, it's like that. It's like one corporation owns the moon, another corporation owns North and South America. Everything's run by corporations. I think every cyberpunk universe is a little bit dystopian. Like it's a capitalistic dystopian future, and yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's where we're heading right now, right? It's because the writers who wrote those epic, stories, we see the writing on the wall. They're just able to, capture that in awesome ways that are fun to watch. But it's true. Like, the direction we're heading right now is one of the biggest issues with capitalism is there's no limits into how much capital a single corporation can attain. And as an engineer, I can tell you, any system that doesn't have limits designed in the system, it's not a great system, because people are going to exploit. Anytime that you can get past, like, find exploitations in the system, you're going to be able to use it. And that's what's happening today, right? It was interesting. I've been reading the novel Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I'm not sure if you've ever read it, but it's one of like the hallmarks of arguments for laissez-faire capitalism, which is basically like no government involvement. Everybody should just be free to pursue like capital, make money as they best see fit. Because if they do so, that's going to benefit all of society, because you're going to have innovators, you're going to have people that just work harder than others, and they're going to produce more, and they're going to create things that will benefit the rest of society. That's kind of the argument. It's an amazing book. I'm not doing it justice, but like, that's one of the arguments she makes, is like, we should not regulate people. They should be free to pursue things, because some people just perform better than others. And I think back in the day when she wrote that was back in the 50s when it was published. That probably made a lot more sense. But we can see today, like, that's not necessarily true, right? Like, the guys at the top, they're not making society better, but they're still like amassing more capital. And it's not helping like the rest of us. We're kind of, and so.
I mean, it depends on the person, if you ask me.
Sure.
Like, if you look at Elon Musk, he's a very controversial public figure. But I think if you take a step back, that's my personal opinion, right? There's a net positive for humanity, especially when it comes to the space exploration front. So, sure. And he's only able to do that because he has a freaking load of money. So yeah. I would not generalize. I think there's
no, I wouldn't either. I think she has sound arguments to the fact that some people produce better than others. And when they're given the proper resources, that does make society better. But we definitely see the case where that's not true, right? We see like in the Middle East, like all the guys that are just raking in through oil, and they build fancy towers, and they build like luxury, hotels and things like that. And like, that's nice for the rich that can afford that stuff. But is that making it better for the rest of society? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, to each their own. But there's definitely like better ways we could probably use those resources to have income generating vehicles that others can then, for example, infrastructure, that people can then like be able to build businesses and things, like help the economy further that way. And so there's definitely ways in which that's not always true. That just because I have more money and like if I'm left unregulated, that it's going to be better for society. That's definitely not true because, you know, whether it's obviously we deal with pollution, we're dealing with, you know, global warming. These are all the effects of unregulated capitalism where, hey, I'm generating capital, I'm producing goods and services, but what's the impact for the environment? What's the impact for society in 100 years? Right. Those are the kind of the things we got to consider. And there's no incentive for those individual corporations to change. There's no incentive for, other than to look good, like public facing, to say, hey, we have greenhouse credits, or like we're reducing greenhouse emissions, which again, they're just like, they're just passing the buck around to somebody else.
You know what I love when there's the Pride Month and they all just change their logos to the rainbow logo, and now that there's a new administration, so most of the companies don't do that anymore. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. It's all.
It's because now it's more popular, like it's more like socially acceptable, and they're just trying to ride that wave of like, look at us. And it's like, dude, where were you 10, 15 years ago when like people were like being, you know, persecuted and ridiculed for that, you know? Obviously they weren't there because it wasn't popular at the time. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it's all just to save face. So, but coming back to your point, right? Okay, so if UBI is maybe not the best solution, can we imagine an alternative economic system to capitalism where our incentive as a society is community well-being? In addition to obviously providing for ourselves, we're going to have money. Okay. Like I always find it fascinating, like with Star Trek, when, I don't know if you like ever watched the show, but they're just like, yeah, like we're done with money. Like we don't really use money. Everybody just works because they want to, kind of thing. Right. Which is really like, it's cool. Like the idea is cool,